It didn't seem to me to be a particularly shocking thing that JK Rowling said. She simply was saying, when you say people who menstruate, isn't that women?
Yeah, and if we don't talk clearly about public health issues, then there is a risk that people aren't going to understand what's being talked about. So menstruators is not a natural term in English that most people are familiar with. Everyone is familiar with women, girl. Not all women menstruate, but no one ever thought they did. So for decades, centuries, we've been able to talk about women and girls without thinking that we must have the term that describes exactly that demographic. Not all women menstruate, but we've got a rough and ready generalisation that covers, it does what we need to.
See, and my problem with all this debate is I'm absolutely with the trans rights groups when it comes to their battle for fairness and equality. I am for everybody, you know, any marginalised group. Right to the point, though, where it clearly damages women's rights or women's rights to fairness and equality. And by women, I'm talking there specifically of women born to biological female bodies and not trans women. Well, the argument is, though, that the trans lobby want to be called women or men if they go the other way. And in doing so, it seems to me that it's creating this firestorm where many women feel they are now being marginalised.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the government and all the political parties at the moment, up until the weekend anyway, seemed really on board with the idea it's gender identity, that is feelings of being a woman or man, that should beat sex in any contest where one of them has to be important. So single-sex spaces or how we call each other or how we speak to each other, or prisons, female prisons. So there's lots and lots of issues that impact directly on 51% of the population, and yet so far they haven't really had a proper say in how all this is being arranged. And I think she was paying attention to that, and that's really important.
Nicole Gibson, why is it offensive to the trans community to call people who menstruate women? Why is the phrase people who menstruate preferred?
I can only answer for myself, and I'm not offended by that in the slightest. I think the problem here is that a lot of the trans activists who are doing a lot of the talking have got a huge chip on their shoulder, and they're very aggressive with how they put their own opinions across. And it appears to the whole of the general public that they're talking for all of us. I, for one, don't find the term women offensive. I don't want to live in a world where we can't say men, women. I say normal. You know, being trans isn't normal. It's hardly our fault. Gender dysphoria is a condition that has a treatment. It doesn't have a cure. It doesn't make us biological women or men. It helps us get through life with this condition. I do feel a little bit like I'm cured because I don't really refer to myself as trans. I refer to myself as a woman. And when I'm reading certain things, you know, I'm not stupid. I know if I'm being spoken about as an individual, or if I know, you know.
You see, everything you're saying, Nicole, seems to me perfectly sensible, rational, reasonable. You know, my issue with the whole trans debate has only been really where things seem so ridiculous to me. For example, the issue of trans women competing in sport clearly, indisputably has a damaging effect on women born to female biological bodies competing against trans women who were born to male biological bodies. It's just a demonstrable fact.
Yeah, agreed. And I think if you transitioned, if you did this as an early teen, and if you had puberty blockers, and if you've not lived, using male to female as an example, if you've not lived a long male life pumped full of testosterone, you know, if you're the size of the Rock because of these years that you spent developing a male body, a male life, I don't think that's fair at all. I do, however, think if you are, like I said, if you've had the puberty blockers, if you've not had that huge injection of natural hormones, then I think that's...
Yeah, let's bring in India. India, we've discussed this many times on here. You've always been a voice of common sense and reason about this. How much of what JK Rowling said... I've got no truck for JK Rowling. She's led pylons on me on social media for years. So it's quite ironic watching her now cop it as well and inevitably playing the victim, which is what she did.
Hang on. She was describing her experience literally as a victim of domestic abuse.
I understand that. I'm using that phrase in the sense that there seems to be a growing thing at the moment where when people get into hot water, we saw it with Kyle Walker, the footballer, caught breaking lockdown, out comes the victim card. And I actually don't think it helps the debate. The debate should be about what JK Rowling said and whether what she said actually is offensive to trans women. What do you feel?
I think JK Rowling made two really good points, those being self-identification, which has been an absolute disaster, the worst thing that has happened to the trans population in as long as I can remember. It's probably set trans rights back and trans awareness and acceptance at least 10 years. That was a really good point she made.
Can you just explain that, the issue there?
Yeah, well, the big push over the last 3 or 4 years within the LGBT world has been to introduce this policy called self-identification. Now, unlike myself and Nicole there, who has spoken very eloquently, and I agree with all the points that Nicole made, the big push has been that instead of people having a medical condition where, you transition and you alleviate how you feel, you click your fingers, and with a click of the fingers, you've changed sex. Now, with the best will in the world, that is absolutely crazy. I'm all for people leading their own lives, but to say that is the same as being a woman or the same as somebody who's actually transitioned and has spent years going through the various tough processes, both, mental and physical, to get to that stage is absolutely ludicrous. And I think that's why there is so much confusion on this topic. You have two blocks of trans people. One block transition physically and as far as I'm concerned, they become women. It would be ridiculous for myself or Nicole to start using, the gents' toilets or the gents' changing. Crazy. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, India, that I just think that when I hear you talk or Nicole talk, you're very reasonable about all this. You don't want to have some great blazing culture war where, if you're looking at it in detail, when JK Rowling wrote this 3,500-word sort of defence of herself, and like I say, I mean, she brought in the fact that she'd been, as she called it, a survivor of domestic abuse and whatever. I think she's been on this thing about the trans debate for a long time. You've now had a lot of younger Harry Potter stars coming up against her. When you read what she said, what did you take exception to? What did you not agree with?
Well, I do actually think she's transphobic. I'll be absolutely honest about that. And I think that's down to where she's been educated. I know for a fact that she's got a lot of her information from a well-known parenting site, which is well known as, being a recruiting sergeant these days. It's been colonized, if you like, by the trans exclusionary radical feminists who are the body who are...
These are the TERFs. I mean, nobody... there's a TERF war, but nobody really, outside of a very small number of people, even understand what a TERF is. We hear all this stuff. It's like, what is it?
And the people accused of being TERFs probably wouldn't...
It's trans-exclusionary something. What is it?
Trans-exclusionary radical feminism.
Yeah, but none of this helps India. All of this is just nonsense, culture war, aggression. And what it seems to me is that, I thought the pandemic might sort some of this stuff out, actually, and there would be a more common-sense approach, as indeed we've had with this debate today. But we're not seeing that. I'm just seeing the abuse that JK Rowling got from people who profess to be standing up for tolerance, I thought was outrageous.
But
absolutely outrageous.
I mean, there's some very oblique terms in that long essay that JK Rowling did. I mean, there's a reference there to clownfish. Now, clownfish are amazing. Clownfish can actually change sex naturally. Incredible. But it's used in certain areas as an insult towards trans people. So on the face of it, I mean, there's an innocent reference, clownfish, but JK Rowling knows the weight that clownfish carries, yet she used that thing.